Hello, and welcome to Stories from the View, a podcast from the Pleasant View Senior Center in East Longmeadow, Massachusetts. On this podcast, we invite East Longmeadow residents to tell us stories about their lives and events. And today's guest is Fred Sokol. Now, if that name rings a bell with you, it's probably because you know him as a columnist in the Springfield newspapers. He also writes for Talking Broadway. He's a novelist. He's a college faculty member, theater director. We are very happy to have him here with us today. And with us, we have Jeff Teeden on our podcast committee. And we also have our host, Mary Jenowin Kaplan.
Good morning. Thank you, Eric. And thank you, Fred, for joining us today.
My pleasure to be here.
We have so many wonderful people with wonderful stories here at Stories from the View. But Fred, you've been around. And so I would love to hear about your latest and greatest project right here at our very own Pleasant View Center.
Well, why don't we start with the best then, which is the current rendering of Don Quixote, 1 hour version, featuring many actors from this very center and several who are not affiliated with the center in a formal sense, but are all welcome. And we've kind of come together during the past few months, and we now will have a production date, which is May 9th at 12:45 right here in the auditorium. And I'm extremely excited to be doing this show. And it harkens back to my own first encounter, shall we say, with directing plays, which occurred, I think, around 1978 or 79. I was hired at Asnuntuck Community College in Enfield, Connecticut in 1975. And when I walked through that door, a guy with extremely long hair, even longer than mine, which was pretty long at the time, dressed in overalls and a Mickey Mouse T-shirt and sweating profusely, kind of came to the door and he said, Can you direct plays? Can you do a theater program? And I, who had never done it before, said, of course. And thereupon began this journey.
Did you have a theater background? Was this the hubris of youth? What?
Well,
Fred?
I was always on the fringes, very close to theater. But I did some acting as a kid and as a teenager, but I was not a trained performer. I was right on the edge of being a trained performer. And I thought, yeah, I can do this. I had done some theater workshops at a summer camp. Actually, As You Like It was the first one that I did, which is a great way to start with something difficult and Shakespearean. Yeah. But I said, yeah, I can do this. And so thereupon, this guy who was trained in theater, who was a trained actor, who was really wanting to be a filmmaker, wanted to hand off the entire drama program at Asnuntuck Community College to me. And I was gratified. So I said, okay, let's do it. And we began with a play called Yes, My Darling Daughter. We moved on to Barefoot in the Park, which is far more common. And we were out in an open area where we had to unplug pinball machines, which were competitive with our production. So you can imagine this. People were getting popcorn and soda and playing pinball. And I was trying to say, like, we got a production going on here, come on. So 2 productions that we did in that space. And then we moved to a different locale. And I actually ended up doing 35 shows there in 30 years that I was at Asnuntuck. All kinds of things, ranging from Hamlet and Romeo and Juliet through musicals, The Hobbit, a musical, Wizard of Oz, all kinds of things. And everyone, in a sense, by the seat of my pants.
You rose to the occasion.
Well, yeah.
You did it.
Rising by the seat of my pants to the occasion every single time. And performing as the only college at City Stage in downtown Springfield, the only college including all of the more prestigious colleges in the Upper Valley. We were the only one to perform there. And we did that twice. And to the students, this was tantamount to Broadway. They had their names on the dressing rooms. They had stars. This was the go-to. And it was fabulous. So that all led me to retirement, in a sense, an early retirement at Nantucket, which lasted maybe 8 months until AIC came knocking on my door, actually knocking on my door through the Starbucks in Long Meadow, where Vince Maniaci often hung out. Vince was the president of AIC for a long time. And Vince kind of grabbed me like I'm grabbing a water bottle here one day in the Starbucks, and he said, I know who you are. We have a theater program that's dead in the water. Why don't you come here? And I said, but I just retired. And he said, I know that, but this is going to be fun. And I said, I'll try it. And he said, why don't you just come around? And so I came around, and I found literally some students walking around greens and quads there, like saying, we want to do theater. Nobody's helping us. Can you do it? And I kind of said, yeah. And Vince immediately had me on the college radio station like this, like immediately telling people what I was going to do. And I was going, Vince, give me a chance to get my bearings here. And he said, just do it. So the first thing we did at AIC was a version of The Little Prince. And I did that in the lobby of the theater. And once again, people were saying to me, Fred, what are you doing? You're in the theater lobby. There's a 400 or 500 seat theater here. And I said, it's not going to work in the big theater. Set up the folding chairs. And we had one light. And if that light went out, we'd be performing in the dark. But it didn't go out. It stayed on. And so we did The Little Prince. And to get The Little Prince, I literally drafted a kid off the street and made him The Little Prince. And I went to Vince Maniaci, the president, and I said, can we have somebody who's not really affiliated with AIC in the lead role here, in the title role? And he said, yeah, go for it. So I stuck him in the title role. He was brilliant. I've never seen him ever since. He was just great, though. And that started things at AIC, and that lasted for 5 years. During the final year, the dean of faculty at Bay Path called me on Labor Day of my final year, beginning at AIC, and said, we're in deep soup here with theater at Bay Path. Can you come here and do theater? And I said, I can't, because I'm signed on to do theater here at AIC. And he said at the time, can you do both? And I said, no, I can't. I cannot do 2 theater programs simultaneously. But he began to recruit me at that point. And so there was a nationwide search, and in the end, they did offer me a position at Bay Path. And I went back to AIC, where I'd essentially been working full-time, but not at a full-time salary. And I said, listen, Bay Path wants me. And at that point, Vince Maniaci said, we want you more. And so, as somebody said, I was, in a sense, the king of Western Mass in terms of doing theater programs. And I couldn't decide which one to do. But I happened to live in Long Meadow at the time, and I was living like blocks from Bay Path. Could walk to the campus. And they were making the deal very attractive. And they were giving me a lot more money to do the shows. So I said, I'm going to go to Bay Path. Well, Vince got mad at me. I think we're still friends, but he was mad at me. And Bay Path was very gratified. And so I did theater there for a few years. And then I retired for the 3rd time. And since then, which was 10 years ago, I've been casting and looking about for a home for me to do theater. And I've tried out several ideas at several places. This is the place. And this place is very much akin to me to what Nantucket was at the very beginning, which was a nurturing, kind, charming, inviting, welcoming locale. That's what I found here. I've done some acting workshops. I've presented, and this is kind of the segue to the other part of me, I've presented 2 of my novels here, one current, one just 2 years old, and I had a good experience with doing that. Alicia and I, who's the program leader here, get along very well. It just seems to be a match. And I'm really gratified and happy because what I didn't want to do was affiliate officially again with a quote-unquote institution. I didn't want to become the guy at a community theater because there's all kinds of inherent pressure with that. Here I can kind of find my own way, forge my own way, work with great people like Jeff and others whom I enjoy, and I have talents all over the place, and it seems like this is when I want to be in the room. As Hamilton says, you got to be in the room. And I'm in the room with this particular production. I like being in that room. It's not easy. It's actually difficult and challenging, but it kind of keeps me off the streets of East Longmeadow and Longmeadow.
Oh,
so I mean, and they're dangerous.
The community is safer now.
They're dangerous. And there's another connection to East Longmeadow that I have, and that's my wife, who taught at Birchland Park for about 20 years.
Oh,
so
nice.
I definitely did, and taught math, and I don't understand math. I never have understood math, but she does. She's a wonderful teacher, magnetic teacher. And so I would kind of brush shoulders with all kinds of people in East Longmeadow through Betsy and her teaching and her students. So, that part of it is really an arc which began at Asnuntuck in the late 70s and continues here to this very day with the production of Don Quixote.
Oh, my gracious. We are so fortunate you found us.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that is great. So tell us about the cast. Who are these people? Where did you find them?
Well, we put the word out, and a number of people came to initial meetings, and I would say, for one reason or another, close to half of them are no longer with us by personal choice or circumstances or health issues, and that's all perfectly fine. So we have a solid core of 8 or 9 people who are there every single time, and they're both wonderful, and I will use the word cute to describe them. Cute as in cute like 18-year-olds who are cute and really rabid and wanting to do theater, bringing in wheelbarrows of costumes. So it's my job, in a sense, to say to the guy bringing in the wheelbarrow of costumes and to the woman who just went to the dollar store and bought a bunch of costumes, would you two please talk with one another so that we can get on the same page with the costumes and not have 5 hats for one individual, 5 different kinds of hats for one individual? And they're slowly getting that message. And I heard them saying to one another, why don't we get together here sometime and compare notes and things like that? So anyway, so we've got some people who are who come to the center on a regular basis, like Jeff and a few others. And then, there's one particular family that's involved with this. And that's a great story in itself. And it's the Congo family, Congo.
Mm-hmm.
Lynn Congo. Anybody have heard of her? Well, Lynn Congo is a pianist by profession and played for many shows. Never did any acting, but musically very adept and talented. And she's very proactive. Somehow or other, her daughter has appeared in this cast. And her daughter, I have a terrible time gauging ages of young women, but 35, 30s or maybe 40, whatever she is, she's in that half the age of a lot of the people who are there. Well, and she's a trained actor and a magician,
wow.
A professional magician.
How cool.
Okay. Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
So she comes along, and she's like amazingly talented as anybody with whom I've worked, and I've worked with a lot of high-level talents. And so she comes along, and she is the title character. She's Quixote. She has to be Quixote. She's great. And so I decided to Google her, and I found out that she's been in a lot of films.
Really?
Like horror films, like Alien and Death, all kinds of things. And she's the sweetest, most adorable young woman, and here she has a list of this. So I decided, so I'm, investigating and exploring who these Congo people are. And it turns out that Lynn's husband and Deanna's dad, Deanna's the younger one, is a composer and a musician who does electronic music and has a studio and has done work that's been performed all over this country, if not internationally. And I'm thinking, like, what a resource. Well, we're kind of trying to tap into this resource just a little bit, but he's evidently, and this is a quote, Deanna told me her dad is, I think he's composing an opera to The Fall of the House of Usher or something like that. So I Googled him and I listened to some of his work, which is outstanding. It's exceptional. He's a high-level talent. And his daughter called him a musical genius. So I've, in a sense, I have two of these women, and then I have this guy in the background who's not affiliated in any way with this production, and I don't think that wants to be. But they're in the cast, and I brought in somebody that I knew because we needed a Sancho Panza. And the full circle with this guy, Tim, is that Tim acted for me once in approximately 1980. I mean, it's
Once?
a long time between appearances. He's done a little acting since, one or two things, but basically, this is a huge gap. And I just thought of him because I know he's, again, of the right age, and I know that he's a guy who's had multiple careers as well and has been looking for things to do. And I said, Tim, we need a Sancho Panza. How about you? And he said, sure, I'll do it. He lives in Springfield, and he's here.
I think the lesson here is when you get in Fred's Rolodex,
Yeah.
you don't get out. He knows you're there.
I don't forget about these things.
No, but that's a wonderful attention to detail and being able to bring together people of talent. And Tim is enjoying his role as Sancho.
Oh, he's loving it. He's just having a great time, and I think he's pretty compatible with this group. Instantly compatible. I thought he would be. So they're cast members from here and from elsewhere, and I like that a lot because I feel that eventually, as this whole enterprise grows, and it will grow beyond Quixote, that I'd like to extend it to the community and communities, surrounding communities, and people of different ages. Of course, rehearsal times cannot be during the day if and when we move to something other, but I see this expanding and becoming, bigger and better as time goes on. Yeah.
Wow. And it sounds as if you're team building. You're taking a group of people and if we were at some really boring seminar, would say this is organizational development, but you're having them sort of coalesce into more than just the actors, but the entire production team.
I hope so. Mm-hmm. I mean, I see myself as a communicator, a communicator/director, and jack of all trades in a sense, and I hope a master of a few of those trades, but more bringing people together, yes. Mm-hmm. And I think team building is what I do and what we're trying to do here. And that, to me, is very inviting stuff and engaging to do it that way. And yes, if I've worked with a person or if I know a person, I remember kind of their talents and gifts, and the time will come when I will tap them or email them or text them or race to their house or something and yank them into a cajole or do what I need to do to get them involved. And we have the beginning of a really strong team here, and I love that. That's great. And it's just going to be expansive, I think, from this point on. Yeah.
Fred, you have some pretty serious writing skills. Did you script this 1 hour production, or was it something that already existed that, of course, you knew about? But how does that work?
I have written some plays. This is not one of them. This is somebody's version of Don Quixote, which the authors wrote a 2-hour version, and then in the midst of this said, you can also do this as a 1 hour, and here's where to stop, and here's how we cap it, with Jeff as Cervantes capping this first hour off. And that's what I said, we're going to start with a 1 hour. That's plenty.
I have goosebumps. This is great.
Well, it might be it might go hour and 15 minutes or something, but it's I wanted something that we could control. I mean, other people have even said, why aren't you just doing a half an hour? And I thought this vehicle was perfect for people that we have. In fact, we need two more people to do some of the minor parts to kind of squish them in. But no, this is not something I've written. I have thought about some scripts that I've written for the future.
Yeah.
It's got to be the right demographic and things like that. But there are certainly possibilities. Alicia, by the way, if people don't know, did some acting when she was in college. And I have her in mind, too, and I'm going public with that right on this broadcast.
You heard it here first.
And she will listen to this.
And she has a fabulous voice.
Yeah, well, I know. And then, again, with the figurative Rolodex, she's in it.
Run, Alicia, run.
So, yeah.
Wonderful. So tell us about your writing.
Oh, yeah.
Yet another talent.
This is another anecdotal kind of thing. Well, I was first encouraged to write creatively in the 8th grade, where I wrote a short story about people stuck in a traffic jam on Long Island highways, where I was from. And my 8th grade English teacher, whose name was Tom Ford, in the Rolodex, kind of said, "Fred, you got to write." And I kind of filed that for a long time. Really, the next major encouragement, which was significant, well, I had some in college as well, where certain people thought I was a poet. And I was writing poetry at the time, but I've written very little of it ever since, although I have evidence that I was chosen as a rising poet in the state of Connecticut at a certain point, because I have a poem in this collection, and I was out at the plaza in Hartford reading it during the early 1980s. I barely remember that, but I'm not really a poet. I did a PhD, and during my PhD work, I picked a program which is very flexible and multidisciplinary, and was encouraged to write a short novel as part of that. It wasn't your standard dissertation and that's it. I did that. I wrote a novel. I did a series of essays. I made a videotape. And the chair of that PhD committee, who at one point was the chairperson of English at San Francisco State, read it, and she said, your dialogue is really great. You're writing better dialogue than most people in the country. And I was like, what? And she said, you have to get back to writing dialogue at some point. But what would happen in the next few decades is I was married and I had 2 sons, and I was a very active dad. And I had multiple careers, both writing reviews, that writing aspect, and running theater programs and teaching. I had no space to write novels, I didn't think. And so, again, said to myself, well, someday, some year, I will get to writing these novels. And that began occurring when I was in my 60s. And I'm beyond that now. But so I started that, writing a novel, and the story with that first novel, which is called Mendel and Morris, it began as a short story, is that a friend of mine, I have great friends, who is the associate publisher of Beacon Press in Boston, read part of that and got on the phone with me and said, "Fred, this is really great. I know an agent in New York who's going to want this, and I want part of the film rights when it was filmed." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "This is
Walk
really,
before
this is
you
really
run."
good."
He's already running, yeah.
Well, we sent it to the agent in New York. We said, I love this, but I cannot sell it. And that began the process that you've heard of frustration with getting novels of some quality published. And I knew about that from years of interviewing people. On the other side of this as the interviewer, another part of my careers. But so I tried that for a while, and it wasn't working out, and people said the same thing, which is that I like this, but this is not commercially viable. Can't sell it. Can't get the dollar signs. So I began publishing them by myself, and then Bill Astoria Press came along and published one of my books and promised to publish many more. But Astoria, after 14 years, decided to shut its doors, had to. And so that was the end of my publisher. But Bill Astoria, run by somebody that I know who's a novelist, kind of came to me and said, we're going to teach you how to be your own publisher, but not like a quick and dirty publishing, really to have your own imprint in your own company. So you will be like us, except it's your company. And I was taken through that process, asked to name it, and I named my press Anatevka Press because Anatevka is in Fiddler on the Roof. Mm-hmm. Anatevka, and I thought that's a catchy name, mm-hmm. and it actually is literally a town in the Ukraine, mm-hmm. which I did not know. The town mm-hmm. came after the musical.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I have my Anatevka Press, and for the moment, that's how I publish, even though people come to me and say, you're doing a great job, we love your press, but, you need a big publisher. And I would go like, yeah, but how do you get a big publisher? We know this. You need the agent, and so for now, I'm happy doing my own publishing. And right now, my current novel is called Harry. And I've been around doing various speaking engagements, including one here at the center and one at Odyssey Books, which is a little bit of a coup for me to land at Odyssey, which usually hosts bigger names or bigger publishers than I, but I was very gratified to be there.
And you've already done that one, right?
I did that one.
And was that fun?
It was really fun.
Like, I'm in the big time now.
It was sort
big
of like
time in Western Mass.
We had a number of people come, and a number of people through various phases in my life that I hadn't seen in multiple years and who knew about it and kind of just showed up out of the blue. So
Oh, that's really nice.
And it was nice to have a bunch of people. It's fine when you have half a dozen, but it's better if you have 15 or 20 or 25. It's
exactly. Yeah.
I'm doing a small reading at the Longmeadow Adult Center this coming Monday at 6:00, and then I have one with the JCC in April, and then a bookstore in Worcester, which has taken a liking to me.
Really? Which
May
one?
1st.
I'm just curious.
Tide Pool Books.
Ah.
It's a new place, and it's a little bit of a digression in story, but these folks retired and said to themselves, we've always wanted to open a bookstore, let's do it. Married couple, and they went to, as they told me, bookstore boot camp to learn how to do it. And they opened this very sweet place in Worcester that has a little nook and cranny where they have readings. And I read there once, and they've welcomed me back with Harry on May 1st. So I enjoy doing that, and I consider myself right now to be a novelist and sometimes playwright. And I continue to do my reviewing, all over New England, really. So multiple careers continue, but not affiliation with a place at the moment.
Well, you're kind of, I don't want to say a free agent, but you have a good global view of the arts in our area, Western Mass.
Well, I think I do.
Yeah.
I think I do. Western Mass and beyond, because my theater writing for the Republican and for Talking Broadway, it's always kind of been the same beat, and that beat goes as far south as Westport in Connecticut, and it goes into the Berkshires. Mm-hmm. For a time when I wrote for the paper, I was encouraged just once or twice a year to pick something special on Broadway and do that. So, those occasions, I picked Rent, mm-hmm. and I picked Lion King, and I picked Angels in America. I picked some of the big ones. And that was just, a confined, finite period. But mostly it's been Connecticut, Western Mass, the Berkshires in terms of reviewing. And that continues. And happily so. I'm glad I'm still doing that.
I don't want to give you a test, but is there anything from your Talking Broadway experiences recently that you could share with us here? Our listening audience might appreciate hearing about something that you have
I can tell
reviewed.
you two things that people can still get to.
Great.
That are definitely worth it. Mm-hmm. One's in the Berkshires, and that place is called Barrington Stage Company in Pittsfield.
Right.
What they do every February is what they call a 10 by 10 new play festival. 10 10-minute plays by different writers, one after another, with kind of 6 cast members taking on multiple roles. It is just really fun in midwinter, high-level fun. This particular rendering is great. I was just there several days ago, and I loved it. And it's, it takes an hour and 10 or 15 minutes to get there. By car, it's really worth it on a day when it's not snowing or sleeting or anything.
It's
like
the Mass
that.
Pike. It's straight.
So,
You can get there.
and the other one, which is fascinating, and I'm currently writing that review, which I will finish when I go home today, is at Long Wharf Theater. Long Wharf Theater, a couple of years ago, lost its valued home. They had a big building in New Haven, and they simply couldn't do it fiscally. So they converted to a different model where they present in and about New Haven at various locations. Well, they picked the Canal Dock Boathouse, which is right on the water, right on the harbor, right off I-91, and where 91 and 95 join that right angle in New Haven. There's a beautiful boathouse. And what they've done is they've taken the upper floor of that, and they're presenting Arthur Miller's A View from the Bridge, which is a great old play set in Red Hook on the docks in Brooklyn in the mid-1950s. Well, now it's set on the water again in a beautiful location with high-level equity talent. People some who watched Nurse Jackie with who is it with again?
I know. What is the actress's name? That's what you're
Edie
reaching
Falco.
for. Edie Falco.
Edie
Yeah.
Falco.
Yeah.
Opposite Edie Falco was playing the nurse. Stephen is the lead actor in A View from the Bridge. So high-level people, Annie Parise and other great actresses in that show. Mm-hmm. So I just saw that 2 nights ago in the boathouse, which is, by the way, very cozy, but it does have an outside balcony. And so you get the whole feel of kind of the waterfront there. So 2 things, the show at Barrington Stage and the A View from the Bridge, Arthur Miller in New Haven. Arthur Miller I didn't meet once at a press conference. I've always loved Arthur Miller's work. For those not familiar, less familiar, All My Sons, but very familiar, Death of a Salesman to people and more. So yeah, a lot of stuff.
There is no dust on you, mister. No moss on this rolling stone. Oh, my gracious. But what fun. How many interesting, different things you're juggling now.
And my shooting 3-pointers in my driveway.
Okay,
This is what's really
let's move
important.
into the sports arena. We've covered the arts and culture. Tell us about your basketball career.
Well, I've been, playing. I started playing basketball when I was 6. And that's when I started playing the accordion, by the way, as well, which I also do. But
If only he'd brought it.
well, I have. That's a whole. I don't know. We'll get to that story, but the basketball thing. So I started playing, and I played in various teams, but I've always enjoyed more just playing pickup basketball in playgrounds and gyms, which I did throughout Springfield and mostly Springfield and Long Meadow a little bit, but Springfield mostly until 8 years ago. I was playing full court, and then I had to stop for medical reasons. But I still shoot around at least once a day, if not twice a day, in my driveway or at a local playground. And I'm a streaky 3-point shooter who, when he's on, can really shoot, and when he's off, that's a problem. But so I'm writing a book about somebody with whom I played, and I can tell you about what that book is about? Do we have time to just...
We do.
Well, so in the course of my playing, I met a guy named Devron McCummings, at this point probably 20 years ago, who was a way better basketball player than I am. And we became friends. I mean, I'm who I am, and Devron is an African-American playground star on the playgrounds of Springfield. And so this is something of a Springfield birthplace of basketball story. It's Devron's story, but somebody who read half of it said it's a little bit of a duet, too, because it goes back to Fred Sokol, 6-year-old, shooting a layup. And I played with Devron, and we became close friends. And his multifaceted story is very complex, and it includes some, his time and his involvement with drugs and his writing of his own life, and his now working with kids who are in need. And he's a beautiful guy. And so I started writing a book about him and said, with this Channel 57 at one point did one of their connecting points and had Devron and me on the show. And at the end of it, the Channel 57 people are going like, where is the film? And I'm saying exactly. They're assuming that I'm a filmmaker too. That's one thing I do not have any expertise on. And so I was casting about to try to make this into a film, and I still am. But what I can do is write the book version. And I started that. One of my imminent projects is getting back to that, getting back to him, because it's been a very long time, many years, since he and I have sat down to kind of continue this story to see where it's gone, because it's had many hills and valleys. His has. I respect him. Very good person. Has had a problematic life at times, and recognizes that and feels that, that if he, as he once said to me, if he did not play basketball on those playgrounds, he might not even be here. That it kind of kept him going through tough times, but it went all over the place. And he works at various places in the city, and he works with kids in need, disadvantaged kids and troubled kids, whatever we want to call them. And he's real good at it. He was running a gym, and I would come to the gym and sometimes play there, and we'd play outside. And he would say to me, Freddie, if you're hot, I'm going to give you the ball. And if you're not going to see it.
He also knows how to allocate resources appropriately.
Yeah, I mean, he was one of these guys who could control a game inside and outside and had many more skills than I. And he'd just go, let's go to your spot and I'll give you the ball if it's going in. That was my job. And I'd say, Devron, but I can dribble. And he'd go, maybe you could, but now you can't. So yeah, I think that theater and basketball sports have a lot in common. I mean, they're both team sports, and it's team building, Mary, as you said. Mm-hmm. You can't play basketball on a team if you're trying to do everything at once without the other players. And you cannot do a production. I mean, you can do a one-person show, but if you're doing a show with a bunch of characters, everybody has to be on the page. Yeah. And our show now, nominally, I'm the director and I suppose the producer as well, but it really is a community kind of a spirit to what's going on as well. I joked about it before with the costumes, but everybody has more than one finger in this production, and I love that.
Think about the buy-in and the excitement. I believe when you retire, it's an opportunity to do some things you didn't have time to do before because you were busy raising a family, having a job, trying to do what you needed to do to sustain life. And you're bringing a whole new experience to us here at the Pleasant View Senior Center.
Well, we can call us the Pleasant View Players.
You could. You heard it here first, folks.
Or something like that.
Or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. The Pleasant View Players has a ring to it, or Pleasant View, whatever theater, Pleasant View Theater, Pleasant View is a great 2 words, yeah.
That is wonderful. So, Fred, as we've covered so so much wonderful things about your life. Is there anything else you think we've missed? Do you have any parting words? This has been just so much fun, and we can, as I said, always bring you back.
Parting words are that I'm so thrilled to have 4 grandchildren.
Oh,
Those
family,
are my
tell
parting
us.
words.
Tell us about
and
family.
one of them, I will tell you, one of them every Sunday writes a chapter of something or other, whatever she's writing, whatever Allison is writing. And she holds it up on FaceTime and she said, look, you're writing books, and one of my sons is a writer as well, a civil rights author, and civil rights historian, one of my kids. But I'm very proud of both my 2 sons, daughters-in-law, and 4 grandchildren. It's just great. So that's where I kind of run off when I'm running, and I'm oftentimes seen running. It usually has something to do with family, and very important to me. And I'm just thrilled to be here working at the center. As I said, it's redundant, but I cannot say it enough times that the fit seems to be a great one, and I suppose I'm going to do more and more here.
And we look forward to that.
Yeah, so can we review here when the performance is going to be?
Great idea.
Yeah, kind of, so.
Sure, the performance will be Thursday, May 9th, 12:45, out in the auditorium. And we hope to schedule in 1 or 2 more, but we have a definite date for the first time, and that's it, May 9th, a Thursday, 12:45. And I hope a lot of people are here, and spread the word far and wide. Everybody's welcome.
And it's
And-
easy. You don't need tickets.
Right, you don't
just
need
show
tickets.
up.
It's a free performance here at the Pleasant View Senior Center. So, yeah, it's exciting.
I think I know 3 people who are definitely going to be there.
If everybody brings 3 people, it's great.
Right,
You
right.
don't
Yeah,
have
then
to
you'll
worry
have quite
about
an
that.
audience there, Jeff. Yeah, yeah.
The buzz has already
I'm
started.
Cervantes, they do everything.
Yeah. Well, it's exciting. So we look forward to the performance, and we thank you very much for coming in. It's one of those things where I've heard the name, and when you were talking about as Nuntuck and AIC, and and talking Broadway and all this kind of stuff, it all just started to click with me about okay now, yeah. So it's very interesting. Yeah.
Oh, thanks. Fun session. I
Yeah,
loved it.
yeah. So thanks for being here with us. So that wraps up another episode of Stories from the View. We'd like to thank our guest, Fred Sokol. Thanks so much for being here again, Fred. The Stories from the View podcast, it's available on the LCAT 01028 channel on YouTube and on Spotify. If you have a story you'd like to share on the program, contact Pleasant View Senior Center Director Aaron Kobler by stopping by the Pleasant View Senior Center or by calling Aaron 413-525-5436, extension 1401, or you can send Aaron an email, aaron.kobler@eastlongmeadowma.gov. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on Stories from the View.